This one isn't going to be reading. I just want to say a few things. First of all, in the comments, I had somebody asking if I had seen the movie Step Brothers. I have not. I did say I would look into it, and I have looked into it, and the movie is rated R for sexual and language content, and I don't watch rated R movies. I avoid them as much as I can. So I will not be watching it, unless I can get like VidAngel or one of those services that filters it down to a PG-13 rating. I will not be watching it. I'm not a big fan of Will Ferrell anyways. Don't care for his style of humor. So I was going to watch it, or I looked into it, and I would have watched it if it wasn't rated R. But I'm going to stay away from it. I did want to mention something about the timeline. And this isn't about the specifics of the timeline, but if we look at the secular timeline, the timeline that secular historians have set out, they say that Christ was actually born like in 1 or 2, like I think it's 2 BC or maybe 4 BC. So he wasn't actually born at that time. And then we have Zedekiah is said to have become king in Judah in the year 598. The problem with this, is 598 minus the 4 is 594 years. But the Book of Mormon tells us that the first year of King Zedekiah's reign was 600 years before the birth of Christ. And when we follow the timeline laid out in the Book of Mormon, it is exactly 600 years. So we're missing a few years. The secular scholars do not have an accurate timeline. Now, I know a lot of people, even in the church, there's a lot of members, and even the leadership kind of says, we take what we can from and I agree, take what we can from the secular scholars. But when we try to force the scriptures to line up to what secular scholars claim, I think we have a problem. But there's been a lot, especially in the last 10, 15 years, where the church has been kind of, and I don't think it's them putting out official doctrinal statements, but they're catering to this drive in the church. Even in the modern church, we got a lot of people who want the scholars to be true. They want to hold the scholars up as their top authority, and then say we have to make the church fit the scholars. Now, in the past, it was the other way around. People understood that the scriptures are the truth, and if the scholars disagree with the scriptures, then the scholars are wrong. That's just the way it is. But there's too many people in the church now who are secular in their thinking, even though and I'm not saying they don't believe, I don't say they don't have faith, but they are still secular in their thinking in that they think the scholars are the top authority. They put the prophets under the scholars. The scholars are their top point. And the church has, over the years, to kind of cater to these people, not to these people, but to kind of cater to this mindset. They have put things out, and what they say, and they'll even say this is the best scholarship. It's not doctrine. That's what the essays on the church website. If you read the introduction to the essays, that's what they say. These are the best scholarship we have. Doesn't say it's doctrine, doesn't say it's revelation, doesn't even say it's the official position of the church in any way. It simply says this is the best scholarship. But because the church has put it out there, a lot of people think that these are the definitive answers. This is the final say of the church on these matters. And it really isn't. It is just, as they say, the best scholarship. And so those who want the scholars to be right have their excuse. But it still leaves open the fact that the prophets or the scriptures, they're the ones that have the truth. But the church is saying, look, yes, this is what the scholars say. And we don't want to hide that. We don't want to have people think that we're trying to hide what the scholars say. Because we're not. The church doesn't care what scholars say. It never has. Scholars can say what they want. And the reason I bring this up is because we've been reading in First Nephi. And now this is my copy, printed. This is the 1981 edition. And I love this edition because it has these nice little footnotes in here. Now, normally, you have the lettered footnotes. Each verse has A, B, all that. But we also have, in various places, whenever it mentions a year, we have down at the very end of the footnotes. Come on, where are they? So, for instance, in the book of Enos here, verse 25, and Enos says, "And it came to pass that I began to be old, and 179 years had passed away from the time that our father Father Lehi left Jerusalem." Okay, 179 years. Now, it's 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem until the birth of Christ. So 600 minus 179, 420, 421, but because of the way the calendar works, it puts it in the footnotes as 420 BC, has a little star. Then in the book of Jerem, we have, "Now behold, 200 years had passed away." So we have this little star at the bottom, 399 BC. And again, whenever we get a year stated, they've calculated for you when that would have been, how many years before Christ that would have been. Now, sometimes we don't have years, and so they just give us a range. So we know, for instance, that they left Jerusalem in the 600 BC, and they spent 8 years in the wilderness. So all that traveling in the wilderness, the footnotes just say between 600 and 592, because that's 8 years. They changed this in the most recent edition. They no longer have these footnotes. And instead, they just give us an about in the chapter heading. So this chapter takes place about this time. And usually it gives us a range of years. They're no longer calculating exact dates, exact years. And the reason for that is because the timeline in the Book of Mormon, even though it is what the Book of Mormon itself states, this is the actual timeline that we have, this is how it actually happened, it's not the timeline that secular scholars have laid out. And so they change this. They no longer calculate it because they don't want that. We just don't know exactly how this works out. And technically, we don't. We don't know exactly because when they change years, it might have been in January, it might have been in December. We don't know exactly how it breaks down, but we can get pretty darn close because of how the Book of Mormon is recorded. But they don't want to say that anymore because too many people in the church are getting upset that the church isn't agreeing with secular scholars. And I think it's just sad. Now, I understand why they're doing it. As I said, they're catering to this idea in order to reduce friction and conflict within the church. It's not something worth fighting over. The church, and I agree with them to some extent there. It's not something that's worth fighting over. But it is sad that the membership of the church puts so much greater weight on the words of secular scholars than on the words of God. Anyways, I'm going to leave that. This is just a rant of mine. So if you like what I'm doing, subscribe, like, ring the notifications, comment, share, all the good things that help us out. And I will be getting I will be doing a response to a very recent video that was just uploaded to YouTube last week. So I will be doing my response to that. It will be up either Friday or Saturday this week. So stay tuned for that. But we continue in reading the standard works. So we will see you there. Ciao.